back where we first began. I can't believe it. The last time I posted a episode of The New Unfiltered was exactly like a year and 3 days ago from right now, and so much has happened. And I thought to break back into this podcast, I had to do a solo episode. So welcome back to The New Unfiltered. Cannot believe it's been a year. Time flies by. And just so you guys know, all of these episodes going forward, 99% of them are going to be heavily video focused podcast episodes. When I was deciding whether or not to start this podcast again, it was really important to me that I do it in a way that is visually appealing. It not only ups kind of the engagement with the podcast, but it also makes it easier for me when posting. So I didn't have time a few weeks ago when I was in LA in the studio to do a solo episode on video. So this one's just audio. But going forward, I have got a lot of super sick videos with these awesome guests coming up. So what has happened? Let's sum up in a year since July of 2022. I went through the worst heartbreak of my life, the kind of heartbreak that you would only wish upon your worst enemy, and the kind of heartbreak that makes you think about whether you ever actually want to be in love again. But what I can tell you is since going through that experience, it's been over 2 months now, I have never made so much fucking money. I have never felt so confident in who I am. And I have never felt so proud to be able to say that I know how to love people. I know how to be honest, and I know my worth. And I think anyone who's gone through a breakup, and right now it's such a funny time to even be talking about this because I have so many girlfriends for some reason that are going through breakups, and my really good guy friend, a bunch of people. So all of them are asking me these questions. And I think because I've gotten over that 2-month hump, I mean, those first 8 weeks are awful. They're undeniably awful. And I wish more people would talk about it because being in your 20s and going through that, plus in a sense, you're still finding yourself. You're still deciding what career path you want to pursue. And you've got this whole other side of the coin that's like, I can't even get out of bed because I've never felt so sick to my stomach about someone breaking my heart or me breaking their heart, whatever it is. But I can tell you that once you get through that 8 weeks, you're going to be okay. The first 8 weeks, they suck. Sometimes it's the first 12, 16, 22 weeks for some people. But as this fearless girl boss who's gone through the 8 weeks, you come out on the other side. And if it makes you feel any better, all I can say is once you're over that, go make some fucking money and remind yourself how cool you are. Because if someone doesn't want to be in your life, then you have to hope that they're never going to end up with someone as cool as you because you're a dime. You're the coolest person out there, girl or guy listening to this, and you don't need that shit in your life. So I went through that and I came out on the other side and I've learned a tremendous amount. I have to say that moving full-time from LA to Austin, and quite frankly, this is the first time in my life being in Austin that I'm honestly thinking about going back to LA. I've been thinking about it more than I have in the past 2 years. I was telling one of my best friends the other day that I have learned the most in Austin. I have also lost the most in Austin, but I have truly found myself in this city. And when I was living in LA full time and I had the Disney show and then I left Disney and then COVID happened, LA was a place that I always felt was very fake. And it is very fake. I mean, I would be lying if I was going to sit here and be like, it's the best city in the world. It's not the best city in the world. It's very fake. It's very pretentious. But being older, and I think being more okay now with being alone than I ever have been before, because I have never been so crystal clear on my career and how to pursue and get to that next part of my career. LA is a place that there's just more to do there and there's more people to meet. I've realized in Austin, because it's so small, I quite frankly often feel like I'm in high school. I mean, I never can walk outside and not know one person. You can't go to the grocery store and not see someone that you know. And that is super cool. But I'm also someone that finds myself to be very private in my personal life. So constantly running into people that I'm seeing out or that I see at the gym or whatever. It's just like, oh gosh, can't for once I just like walk outside and I'm totally not seeing anyone that I know. I had a really funny situation happen with my apartment in LA. I honestly thought I was getting evicted because and I've been able to keep this apartment because I sublet it to a friend of mine all the time. And so like when he leaves, I go back, vice versa, and it's really easy. And they tried to evict me for the first time in 4 years. So when I went back a few weeks ago, I've got this eviction notice on my front door and I'm like, wait, what the fuck? Like now? 4 years? I'm going through this breakup. I actually might want to move back here. And now you guys want to evict me? So in true Alexa Curtis fashion, of course, I like call the CEO of the resident building that I have in LA. This has always been my dream apartment in Los Angeles. So for me to even give up this apartment, I just don't think I could. I remember the minute that I walked into that apartment and I signed the lease, and I remember the lease, it was the most I've ever paid for rent. It was like $1,700 and I had been paying $1,400 for a studio. And I remember calling my mom and being like, I feel like I need to get this apartment. I don't think I can afford it. What do you think I should do? And she was just like, look, you've called me with things like this before. You always end up figuring out a way. My mom's also British and gets like really anxious about me when I show that I could be struggling or when I show that like I don't know the answers. So she was like, do it, but also like don't do it. And I ended up doing it. And it was the best decision I ever made. And now I pay close to $2,500 a month in Austin, and it's insane. And it's so funny looking back because I'm like, wow, oh my God, I was freaking out about $1,700. Then I freaked out about $2,500. And I'm like, what's next? Am I going to be freaking out about my $10 million house I buy in the future for myself? Probably, because that's just how it goes. But yeah, so I get back there and, there's this notice on the door. And I end up calling the CEO of the building complex, and she definitely hates me. But of course, I put on my sweet face and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what do you mean? I don't have anyone else in here when I'm not there. I love this building. I've never had any problems. So we go back and forth for 2 weeks. And finally, she's like, she literally writes me an email and is like, I've never had such an annoying tenant. And this woman's probably like 65. Classic old LA miserable woman who probably hates her job in her life, which is totally fine, not my problem, but that was very apparent. She was just like, you are so annoying. I don't even know how to handle you. Like, just add your friend's name to the lease, and I don't know what the hell it is that you're doing, but just keep doing it and stop calling me. Booyah. So anyhow, so my LA apartment is good. My Austin apartment is good, but being here, I've just learned an incredible amount about myself. I don't think I'm ready to 100% go back yet. I'm going to test out the waters in some sense in August and see if spending a little bit more time there makes me realize anything or if I actually really want to be there. I loved being there when I had the Disney show. And the reason that I had to end up stopping the New Unfiltered for a while is because transitioning from this podcast to Disney and then leaving Disney and pursuing Be Fearless Summit, for me, this podcast just became kind of a pain to produce and to maintain. And the last thing I ever want to do with anything that I'm partaking in is half-ass it. And I felt like this podcast was getting to a point where I was half-assing it. I didn't have the time. It wasn't making me a ton of money like the Disney show was. And so it was just a harder water for me to navigate. But for those of you that have been a part of this journey since the beginning, I am so obsessed with so many of you who reach out to me and notice how much newer content I've been putting out. I hate calling myself an influencer, and I feel like lately I have been very influency. But the reason that I've had to go down that path and start producing a lot more of my own content is not because that's not what I love to do. I love being on camera. I love connecting with you guys. But I have come to the realization that the only person you can bet on in your life is yourself. I have experienced some crazy things in business in the past year, both amazing and both terrible, that have made me learn so much about myself. And I can tell you that you will never be able to spend enough money or lose enough money and ever be able to regret learning those life lessons, because I can tell you, as someone who over the years has lost a lot of money learning those lessons, they are invaluable. They are priceless. And though I'm crying as I'm sending money to someone, or I'm like, oh my God, I've never spent this much money in my life. Like for the past 2 months, I spent $4,000 on a coach. I've never had a coach. I had always said I would never have a coach because I think they're a little bit BS. Personally, I don't know. I've got weird things about coaches. It's like, what's a coach? What's a mentor? Am I paying someone, but I really should be paying a therapist? And so I embarked on hiring this coach, and I did ultimately finish the contract and not re-sign, more because I had some other expenses unexpectedly that I needed to really focus on. And that 2,000 retainer a month was just becoming too much for me. But I took the leap and I tried it out. And it was at a pivotal time in my career a few months ago where I felt like I needed someone to tell me what to do that wasn't my therapist. And he was great. He was awesome. But it was just a lot of money. But look, you got to put a lot of money out sometimes to make a lot of money. And so that's what I've realized in the past 6-9 months is you got to put money out to get money back. And that's just how this world goes. So if you're trying to pursue entrepreneurship, if you're trying to build something, and you've got this amazing idea, but you don't have the capital for it, you don't really need to raise money. I would say try and ask your friends and family for some. Try and go and do a crowdfund online, take out a small loan, whatever it is. But I've been posting a lot more of my personal own content because I know that it resonates with so many of you. And I also know, like I said, that I really can only bet on myself at this point. Be Fearless Summit is one of my other passion projects that I had 5 of those amazing summits with. And I'm really now thinking about doing another one in 2024. But I think just getting older and really being very strategic with what I'm dipping my toes in, like going back to my personal brand now, focusing on this podcast, focusing on putting out super inspirational, fearless content. Hopefully then being able to host a one-off summit that so many of you guys have actually reached out and offered to help me plan, which just brings me to tears because it's the coolest thing for me to be able to see that me experiencing these things and being honest about them strikes a fearless chord for all of you. And that's why I started this whole thing in the first place, right? I didn't have a role model growing up. And so I wanted to create that role model for myself. But hopefully hosting another Be Fearless Summit, and then in the future writing a book. And then I am starting another company that I am not going to be talking too much about because I've decided I don't want myself to be the face of it. But it is a really cool concept. I had the idea when I was in Istanbul with my sister and one of my best friends, Nick. I am not dating Nick for the 1,000th time. He is my best friend. And when I was going through this breakup, I dragged him everywhere with me. I was like, dude, we're going to New York. I was like, dude, we're going to LA. And Nick works for himself. So eventually he was like, Alexa, I cannot hang out with you anymore. I need you to take like a week to yourself. And in that week, I was like, no, oh my God, don't leave. And then, of course, I wake up the next day and I'm like, wow, it's so nice to be waking up alone and not have anyone in my apartment. But he was amazing. And so we actually had this idea when I was in Istanbul. And it's a company that I'm super excited about. I've realized as much as I love the personal brand as well, I got a lot into the tech space last year. I mean, many of you guys know the other company that I was a part of that I have since left. And that was an awesome experience for me. And I grew a lot through that. But I'm now ready to enter the next chapter of my life and my career. And sometimes you have to realize too, sometimes you try something and it works in a different way than you expected it to. And then you have to be confident and happy sometimes being like this, I got what I needed from this. I learned a lot from this and now I'm ready to walk away. And that's how I feel from my experience in business in the past year. And now I'm ready to go back to really betting on myself. And that has worked in the past. So I can't imagine why it wouldn't work now. But this company is a bit more in the tech space and the SaaS space. And what interests me about that, and is something I would urge a lot of you aspiring content creators and influencers to think about, is the problem with personal brands is that you're constantly having to rely on yourself to do everything. When I was at Disney and I was able to just show up, right, and do my job, which is host the interview, I didn't have to go home and do the editing. I didn't have to really come up with the guests all the time. I didn't have to figure out who's going to sponsor the podcast or the episodes, right? I mean, I got a paycheck by Disney and everyone else did their job, my producers, the guests, and I just got to do up and show up and do my job, and that was amazing. And now, with a personal brand, it's all on you. And so that's why as I've gotten older, I've realized the tech space really interests me. And I've dabbled in it before, but not really in the capacity I'm thinking of it now, especially with this new company, because you want residual income. And residual income doesn't really come from a personal brand. Take it from someone who has done the personal brand thing for 10 years, successfully for probably 2 or 3, and I think really successfully now. It's a grind. You constantly have to do it. And if you're like me and you're maybe in your mid-20s and you're getting to that point where like, oh my God, 30. And I'm not someone who ever was like, oh my God, 30. But lately I've been, oh my God, 30. But not in a bad way, just in a like, like, what does that even mean? I never was someone, and I don't think anyone should be the kind of person who's like, by 30, you need kids and a husband. I think that's insane. And I think that is the stupidest thing ever. The most successful people I know who are married, got married way mid to late 30s, if not early 40s. So remember that, be a girl boss. You do not need to get married by 30. But I think it's just some of those moments where you're just a lot more strategic, right? Like, I'm about to turn 26 in October. So my strategy for my life, my strategy for my confidence, my strategy for my friendships, they evolve and they ebb and they flow. But the older you get, the more strategic you have to be because, right? Like, you're getting older. I only have a certain amount of time left. I don't want to make as many mistakes. And trust me, in the past year, I have made so many mistakes, but the learning curves from them, again, were totally priceless. I could not put a price tag on what I've learned in the past year, the good, the bad, and everything in between. But with that personal brand, you're constantly going to have to be the face of it. And so it comes to a point where it's, do you want to be in 10 years waking up and being the one who's like on Instagram, hey guys, what's up? Today a day in my life, or talking about your breakup or whatnot. And that's what resonates with you guys. And I'm here to be that figure for you. But with the tech space, it's that residual income and you don't have to be the face of it. And so I definitely see myself evolving into a future business owner that has some type of business in the tech space and isn't just the personal brand. But I also find I feel the most rewarded pursuing this personal brand. It's what I've done. It's what I know. And it's what I know how to sell. Some of these other areas, events, tech. I mean, it's a new water for me, but it's super cool because as an entrepreneur, I think you have to keep stretching your limits. I think you have to keep learning. And so I find that the more I can dabble in that I have no idea what's going on, like this new company I'm starting with my friend, I have no idea what's going on. I mean, I'm texting him half the time, like, wait, so if we buy 100 samples up front, then how much do we have to sell it for? And what happens if we don't sell it? And do we take out a business loan? And so that's where I learn, because otherwise I'm doing the same stuff and I know it works, but I'm also not growing as a person. In that message, if you guys are not following me on YouTube, please go subscribe to my channel. I have been trying to put a lot of YouTube content out. It's youtube.com/Alexa Curtis. Of course, the podcast Instagram is @TheNewUnfiltered. And the Be Fearless Summit one will be coming back soon. Just give me a little bit of time. I'm kind of figuring out the waters right now with the next step to host that kind of a conference or pursue that type of an experience and make it worth it for me and for you. So hang tight, but I just love and appreciate all of you reaching out and wanting to help, and the community that we've been able to build since the beginning of me starting this blog back in 2011 up until now. I'm so proud of so many of you, and hopefully all of you feel inspired to continue to pursue this journey with me of being fearless. But I want to get into two other topics in this solo episode. Number one, a quick thing, some books that I've read in the past months that have really, really helped me on a personal and a business level. One in particular, Hangry by Mike Evans. He is the founder of Grubhub. It was an awesome book. I love reading books by male founders who had tremendous success. It's way different for me than listening to a podcast, because as a podcast host, I oddly don't listen to that many podcasts. I know that sounds really weird. If I do, it's just NPR's How I Built This, which I was listening to one today. And for some reason, I just thought the guest sounded like such a bitch, and I turned off the episode. So I was like, wow, guy, what would it be like for him to be interviewing someone who sucks? Like, I have interviewed people. I remember interviewing people at Disney, and oh my gosh, some people just suck. They're bitchy. Their responses suck. They're boring. And it's so funny, right? But as an entrepreneur, you don't have to be your product. I mean, your product, you've got crackers, you've got a lotion, whatever it is, that's what's selling. So you don't have to show up and be a great host. But I'm way more of a book girl. So Hangry by Mike Evans. My good friend Caroline released her second novel. I hate fiction books. She had told me years ago that she was writing a book. And I said, great, is it a memoir? And she was like, no, it's a fiction kind of Sex and the City novel. And I'm like, oh, and I literally point blank, I can't lie. I'm way too honest sometimes. I was like, cool, I'm not going to read it, but LOL, send it to my mom. And she literally did. She sent it to my mom. And my mom was like, Alexa, I read Caroline's book. It's amazing. And I was like, cool, I hate fiction. She was like, all right, well, here's a copy. And one day I didn't have a book to read, and I read the book. Oh my gosh. And now I just read her second book. I don't know what it is about this book. I had no idea. My friend who I met in New York, and we're seriously significant age difference in us. I mean, she's years older than me, years wiser than me. But we met when she was working. She was the head of PR at Serafina Restaurant Group in New York. And if you guys know Serafina is a very, very, very famous restaurant group. And so that's when we met. I never saw her as being this phenomenal writer, and she is. And so the second book just came out, and the first one is called Four Seasons at Angelino's, and this second one is called Four Seasons, I think, at Cutler's. I just finished it in a week and a half. It's so good. Go buy it on Amazon. I'm not saying this because I'm biased and she's my friend. I hate fiction novels, and this is the only fiction novel I will read. The third book that I read a chapter of every day. Now, this is one of those books that I just keep on my coffee table whenever I'm feeling so confused, whenever I'm feeling really lost. I pick up this book, and it's great wisdom. It's How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. Again, one of those books that bookmark the chapters you love, reread it. I love when a book gets like tattered pages. It literally turns me on. I mean, Really Hot Guys turn me on too, but like when you're reading a book and you just smell that it's like getting old and it's getting used, I love that so much. And now my book is getting to that point, and I just want to reread the chapters more. But if you're like me and you're a serious worrier or have serious anxiety, cough, cough, thanks, Dad. I swear my anxiety came from my Jewish father. Read this book. It's awesome. So those three books are great. One book I will say, and it's not really relative to tell you a book that I didn't like, but I do love memoirs, and I picked up Joanna Gaines' book. I haven't really seen much of her stuff on TV. I've never watched the show, but they seem like a serious power couple. Hated the book. I'm like a quarter of the way through, and I've never been more bored with a book. I think it's because she didn't really talk too much about herself in the book. The book seems a lot of like life lessons, and it just doesn't interest me. I love the memoirs and my one fiction book. I'm going to stay in that lane. But if you guys have any amazing books, please let me know. I love finding new books by really awesome entrepreneurs or founders or people doing really great things. And there's a lot of them out there. So let me know. Second topic I wanted to cover is friendships and the evolution of friendships. Now, going back to what I said earlier in this episode about things ebbing and flowing, and the older you get, the more that you realize yourself and your self-worth. I don't know if anyone else can relate to this, but I certainly have struggled with those highs and lows with friendships over the years. And that's where a part of me feels like a bit like I want to move back to LA, is because I've just realized a lot of my OG, like childhood best friends, are in LA. I have made some incredible friends in Austin, Texas, but there's nothing like that friend that's known you since the beginning and knows your highs and lows. I was asked, I think maybe a few months ago or something, by someone, or maybe I went on a date. I think it was maybe a date a few weeks ago, and I haven't been dating much, but he was fine. But whatever. In LA, oh gosh, dating in LA is a whole other story that I don't even want to get into because it's just that bad. But he said, I think something like, "What is something someone would know about you?" And I had never answered this question like this, but I answered it like this, and I said, I love and give like very intensely. I am someone who is probably way too good of a friend sometimes, to where I think it can be a little bit overbearing. I've realized, and with my childhood friends, and like I said, my good friends in LA who I've known for years, like we call each other once a day. We text all day. I mean, the highs, the lows, everything in between. When you've known someone for a year and a half, and if you're someone like me, a lot of people aren't like that. I mean, my good friends are like this, but like a lot of people who you meet in more casual settings or that you become friends with, they don't necessarily have that passion that you may have for the friendship. And so I feel like quite often, sometimes I give way more to relationships than I get back. And I've realized this with myself in dating and my past two relationships that have ended so poorly because I think I was just too good for them. That I give too much, and I think I give too much of myself and like my feelings and my kindness. And I'm like, I love to buy gifts. I love to host parties. I love to have people over. Like if you need anything, if you need to get a drink, like whatever, I am always that person. And I've kind of decided that I no longer want to be that person for people who I don't feel like are giving me that in return. And so being able to be aware, and I guarantee a lot of you listening maybe haven't had this kind of experience yet because you're maybe late teens, early 20s. If you're able to figure out those qualities about yourself at a really early age, for me now I'm 25 and I know it really well, but I can't tell you a few years ago I was able to say that that is something someone would know about me, because I don't know that I knew it about myself. And now that I know it, and now that I've been burned from a lot of friendships and from some experiences dating, you have to just keep yourself a little bit more guarded. There's no reason to be that best friend to everyone. There's no reason to be that amazing girlfriend or amazing girl on every first date to everyone until someone proves that they're worth it. And no one, especially dating wise, is going to prove that to you within the first 5 to 6 months. And as a friendship, No one is going to prove that to you within the first year. I had a really difficult situation happen with a friend of mine last year, and it was a really dumb thing, and the friendship ended, and I still to this day, think, should I send her a text? But I haven't sent that text, which also means something to me. And I mean, she's never sent the text. But I mean, the friendship ended for absolutely no reason besides a very small incident that happened that she kind of freaked out about. And it should have been something like, all right, well, like, you good? Like, let's move on from this. And for whatever reason, I got blocked and never spoke to her again. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. We were out to dinner and they were talking about, blocking people in general. And they were like, Alexa, have you ever been blocked by a guy? And I said, I have never been blocked by anyone besides my one friend who decided to block me last year. I've blocked a few people, not friends, more guys. I've blocked, but like very, very casually. Like, look, if you're blocking someone, oh my gosh, like they really must have struck a chord with you, because there's no reason to block. Anytime I block someone, they really have struck a chord with me. And so the only person that blocked me, unfortunately, was this girl. And at the end of the day, look, you realize that the ebb and the flow of relationships, the effort that some people give and the effort that a lot of people don't give, that's your answer. I haven't written the text because I kind of have my answer. I find myself to be someone who's constantly chasing that closure. Not as much now, but I used to. I mean, if a guy didn't reply to me, right? Hey, like, did something happen? What's going on? If a girl, like, just distanced herself and didn't want to be friends. Hey, did I do something? When in the back of my mind, I know that I usually haven't done anything because nothing has really happened. If something does happen, I am the kind of friend that so intensely, very much like actively tries to fix something because I know my worth, I know my friends, and I would never want to actively upset someone or hurt them. Sometimes things happen and that's what ends up happening, but I always find myself rectifying it immediately. And so if you find yourself in one of those positions and you haven't taken the chance to rectify it, that's probably your answer. You know what you're worth and you know whether the effort is worth it to you. This is in business. This is in your personal life. This is in your personal relationships. The only thing we have at the end of the day is our relationships. You can have all the money in the world. You can have the most beautiful plane or the best car or the best bag. But if you are wearing that bag alone, if you are sitting in that mansion totally alone, if you are on that plane totally alone, is that really worth it to you? Is it really worth it to you to have all of those materialistic things? And great, you've made it, but you don't have anyone with you at the top celebrating you or being happy for you. So I would want all of you to walk away from this episode looking at the people in your life, looking at the business things that you may be interested in pursuing, and questioning in a good way, a good, healthy way, questioning, like, do I feel satisfied from this? Does this friend meet me where I meet them? Does this guy or this girl, whoever it is that you're going out with, do they show up on time? And if not, is showing up on time something that really matters to you? If you love to work out and you're seeing someone or on the first or second date, they're like, I hate working out. Well, that's a red flag, right? Like, you're going to end up sacrificing a part of yourself. And a lot of people that are awesome people end up sacrificing some of their priorities or their thoughts because it seems very simple at the beginning, right? Like, oh, well, he or she doesn't love to work out. It's fine. Like, I love to work out, but I can go and work out. Well, fundamentally, there's a difference there. The same way that if fundamentally you love spending $1,000 on dinner and the guy that you're seeing wants to spend $20 every weekend at McDonald's, those are fundamental differences. And take it from someone who has dated a lot in a lot of different cities to now know exactly what I want. And I will not settle on anyone who doesn't come to the table with some of these very specific things. And if you guys are listening to this episode and want to know those things, reach out to me, let me know. I will do a whole episode on what those non-negotiables are to me. I'm not someone who dates with a lot of rules, but like I said, I've dated a lot. And so I know exactly what those non-negotiables are. But if you can have yourself at a point where you know what those are and you're able to say, it is a red flag, not in a bad way, if this person doesn't meet you where you're going to meet them, there will always be a problem in the future. And if someone walks away from your life, if someone breaks your heart, if a friend blocks you, c'est la vie. Life is too short. If you're a good person and you know your worth and you know what you bring to the table as a friend, as a mentor, as a business partner, as a partner in a relationship, that's your answer right there. I am good enough for me, and the only person you can bet on in your life is yourself. refilming a solo episode in my apartment has made me so excited now about this podcast. Some of the guests that I have coming up are Kim Gold, the founder of True Religion Jeans, which she sold for like $1 billion. Hello, amazing. She also spoke at the last Be Fearless Summit with Vanderbilt about actually 2 years ago, I guess now. So if you loved hearing from Kim, we're going to hear from her on the podcast. Super excited about that. Tyler Dank, who started Beehive. If you don't have a newsletter, I'm a big newsletter person. I've realized that you can monetize the F out of a newsletter. Go make a newsletter. It's awesome. He started Beehive. They just raised about 11 million, I think, in funding. Not only is he like the hottest guy I have probably interviewed in a while, but he's 29. He worked at the Morning Brew. His story is super sick. He's a classic entrepreneur story, and I adore the stories. I also got Laurel Gallucci coming up. She is the founder of Sweet Laurel Bakery. Whether or not you're in LA, you may have seen Laurel's books. You may have seen Laurel's Instagram. That bakery is a top-notch bakery. They are now expanding a product line. She's got some awesome things to say. And then a plethora of other really awesome guests. I'm being very strategic with this podcast. So in my last podcast, I think I interviewed a lot of, younger people and younger people doing really great things. And I love doing that. But I think right now I'm really focused on older entrepreneurs who are really scaling their businesses and getting very involved in the tech scene, because that's really where my interest lies right now. But as usual, if there is a person who you think needs to be interviewed, or there is an idea that you have that you need to share, DM me on Instagram. I'm at Alexa_Curtis. Send me an email. My website is lifeunfilteredwithalexa.com. Of course, you can DM the podcast Instagram as well. All of that, and I will reply and see if they're a fit. And this podcast will air as it used to Wednesday mornings every single week. I've also got a really sick newsletter that's been going out every single week as well, and a lot of you are responding and interacting with it. You can subscribe to that at alexacurtis.beehive.com. It's BEEHIIV.com. I will also be launching a referral program. It may have actually already launched by the time that this podcast episode goes live, that will pay you to refer people to subscribe to the podcast. So you're getting money just for loving this fearless journey. And I am building a robust subscriber list. So thank you for paying my bills. Someone has to pay them, and it comes from this awesome fearless community. So I hope that this was an awesome episode. I hope you guys learned a lot from this. I'm really excited, like I said, to be getting back into this. This is what my sweet spot is and where I feel the most confident and know that I can inspire all of you the most. So thank you for listening. And next week, Tyler's episode will be live next Wednesday. And stay tuned for a new episode of The New Unfiltered.